Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden, and I've been so excited to do this video for a long time now because I believe it will help so many of you instantly unlock the ability to produce food abundance and correctly use succession planting in your garden. And it's all to do with planning, and I'm going to start the video by giving you the most important bit of information first. And the most important bit of information is to stop doing an annual or a yearly planting plan and instead look at doing a month-to-month simplified planting plan. And there were so many reasons why. And ever since I've moved on from doing a yearly plan to a monthly plan, I can assure you now there is no way I can see myself going back to relying on a yearly plan. There are just so many benefits as to why a month-to-month plan works so well, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do it to introduce the idea. And if you've already created a yearly plan, don't worry, you can still adapt it into a monthly plan. And I just hope above everything else that this video will make you feel so much more confident and excited about this year, and also for you to experience so many more harvests which perhaps you could have otherwise missed out on. Just a quick interruption. I've been editing the video and I appreciate it is a long one. So if you need to rewatch certain sections, then there's a contents list in the video description with timestamps to all the key parts of this video for easy navigation. Okay, so I know a few of you might be thinking that a monthly planting plan may seem like a lot of work, but as I said before, I could never possibly imagine myself going back to a yearly plan, and the thought of it actually fills me with horror. The issue with a yearly plan is that it makes it very difficult for you to see the progression and the change throughout the months of the growing season, because the growing season has so many different things happening all at the same time. It's very hard to put that onto a single yearly plan. And what I love about creating a monthly plan is I can foresee what's going to happen in the future. Now, not everything is going to go to plan, but I know if I look on my monthly plan, say in June or July, I know that one of the potato beds will be clear by then, so I've got to make sure that there's something which I can plant in straight away. And let's imagine that I want to sow leeks after harvesting potatoes. I'll start them 2 months earlier. So by looking on the plan and seeing when the gaps emerged, I'm all prepared to make the most of that space, because then if I sow leeks directly in July, chances are you're not really going to have a very good leek crop in winter. With the monthly plan, you can see all of the changes that are going to happen, and by doing this, you can prepare for those empty spaces and really make the most of it and get 2, maybe even 3 crops from the same space in the same season. And that's huge, because especially if you have a smaller garden, you want to make sure that you're maximizing its productivity, and a monthly plan is the key to being able to do that without actually having to go into that much effort having to plan it in the first place. And by creating a monthly plan, the potential of your garden increases almost immediately. And it's going to be so useful because all you need every month are just quick glances to make sure that you're on track and you know what's going to happen, rather than trying to work out all of the different things and, oh, am I sowing that in March or May? I can't quite read it, the writing is too small. With a simplified monthly plan, it makes life so easy. Before I show you how to create a monthly planting plan, there's one more key thing that I need to tell you, which I guarantee will help give you a bigger incentive to do this anyway. And that's the fact that a monthly plan has the ability of it being continuous, because with a continuous plan, you can do the next 12 months, but you can just keep on going. So in one sitting, you can then plan out all of next year. So March next year, you might want to put your potatoes, but you already know which beds are used up. So you don't have to keep on looking back through all of your notes and see what's been going on, which I find really complicated, because at the end of the day, the whole purpose with a month-by-month plan is not just to increase productivity, but to also make it a lot more simple for us as gardeners to look after our spaces and grow food. But let's not worry about the coming growing seasons. Let's just focus on getting this growing season right. And a note about using this month by month plan is because there's a lot of succession growing happening, you might question the need of crop rotation. But succession in itself, in a way, is actually rotating your crops. So all I do is I look after the soil. This garden is almost all no dig, and that's a huge help, and it reduces the need to crop rotate. And the other thing is, if I had a very bad pest like carrot root fly or some kind of disease like leek rust, then I'll definitely move the crops onto a new space the following year. But if not, I'm willing to grow it in the same space again. So just bear that in mind and have that flexibility when you're creating your month by month plan, and that as well will save you a lot of time. Now here is how you create a monthly planting plan for your garden, and I'm going to use a 6-bed example just so you can see how it's going and get a bit of inspiration. So the first step is to put your growing space onto paper or somewhere where you can record it. Now for this garden I did a bird's eye view and I just outlined all of the raised beds, put this into a different document, and you can do this in paper or digital, and then I have that base kind of groundwork of just the empty beds which I can continue using. Because remember, if you're going to do the rest of this year from March until December, you might need to do around 9 or 10 different individual plans. So you want to have one bit of paper which is kind of your master plan sheet, which is just the blank raised beds, and you can either trace over it or photocopy as many versions as you want. Now something that I like to add in to my monthly plan is first a bit of text saying month and then a line, and so I can fill in the month and it's very easy. I instantly know where to look to make sure I'm looking at the right month on the page. And the other thing is to include 3 different keys. The first key are the key direct sowings, the second key is the key direct transplantings, and the third key is what you need to sow for succession in future months. So a quick example is, let's say you have a patch of broad beans and you finished harvesting them towards the end of July and you want to transplant some kale straight into this. Then if I look back maybe end of May, around May time, I can put in the succession planting to sow a row of kale, so I have those seedlings ready to go straight in, and I'm effectively saving 2 months of growing season there and then. Now it's up to you if you want to use those 3 keys, but I like to do it because when I'm glancing at the same page, I can see not just how the garden in terms of the beds will look, but also what the key things are that I need to look at. And once you've done this and you've created your outline, including the keys or not, the next thing is to think of the staple crops that you want to grow. And the staple crops are the ones which you want to prioritize. And these could be either the ones which will make the biggest difference to your food security, or perhaps also the ones that you enjoy the most. And the idea with creating the staples is that these are your must-haves. These are the ones that you can't grow or garden without this year. And so the first stage of creating a monthly plan is to fill all the months out with the staples to make sure that I can fit those in. And then in the gaps, I'll come back and do a second look through and fill all those gaps in with all the crops which aren't in the list of staples and aren't quite as prioritized. So if I was doing this 6 raised bed plan, for example, my staples would be courgettes, potatoes, onions, beetroot, swede, garlic, broad beans, runner beans, and salad. And with just 6 raised beds, as long as I can fit all of those in and have a bit of space for all the extra crops, I will be very happy. And again, prioritizing the staples is another really quick and easy thing to do to make sure that you get the most important things sorted out first. For those of you who are very new to growing your own foods, you will need to spend a bit of time on the internet just researching how long it takes for things from sowing to harvesting, so you get a good idea in terms of when those crops are going to finish. But also, not all of the crops I grow I plan to succession plant. Very often there'll be one crop in the same place all through the year. And the idea with this video is to show you this concept of the month by month plan so you can see how it works for me, and then you can just make little changes to make it work for you, because there might be some things which you think, no, I don't quite agree with that, or you could spot a potential or something useful that I missed out. The best thing for it to be the most effective is to actually put your name on it, make it your own, and it's going to work a lot better than trying to copy someone else's. The next part of creating a month by month plan is to start with the first month and start filling it up. And for me, if I was starting this, I always like to start in March, mainly because in February it'd be a bit of a waste of paper because I'll only be sewing things indoors and nothing direct. And when you're doing this plan with all of the different months, you can either do it digitally and make little adjustments for each file, or do it on paper. I always like to start on paper and then transfer it digitally, but you can do it however you wish. Now, a thing that I can't stress enough is if you are doing it on paper, do it in pencil first, because very often as you progress through the months, you'll notice that perhaps there's a better place to put something. And by doing it in pencil, it's very easy to make the necessary amendments. I'm now going to switch to the computer view so you can hear and see my thought processes on how I plan out the first month. So here we are. The first thing I want to do is to make sure that I know the right month, so I'll just correct that to March. And what I want to do is, with the staples, one of the main staples are potatoes, and I like to mainly grow first earlies and second earlies. So in this bed I will grow some first early potatoes, and then I'll just move that over there, and then in the second bed I will grow second early potatoes. Then, because I've got these as like key sowings or plantings or whatever, I will then in here put first earlies, and then usually I will add in when I'll sow them, so perhaps mid-month, and then the next time will be second earlies in late March. Now down here we have broad beans, so I'll just move this up here somewhere around the center and then transplant the broad beans. And so you can quickly see how this is beginning to fill up. Now the final thing I need to do in March is prepare for two other staples, which is going to be sowing beetroot and then onion sets. And there I have a very quick overview. That's all I need to do to plan for March. Hopefully you have a good idea with how I like to lay out the first month and use the keys. Now let's look at how to start adding to this in the second month. And so just to refresh ourselves, here we have March, and the key successions are beetroot and onion sets. So let's go into April. First thing to do in the month box, fill it in with April. Key transplanting, remember in March we had beetroot and onion sets, so these will now go into transplanting. So I will put beetroot and onion sets here. So I've already put in these lines here just in terms of ease, and the beetroot will go here, and I'll just make sure that that is in the center. And then the next thing to do is I will plant the onions right there. So you can very quickly see how the guide of looking at the key transplanting, how quickly I can make sure that I'm putting things in the right place. And of course, the first earlies, the second earlies and the broad beans all carry over from the previous month. Now in terms of key direct sowings, I've got a few. The first thing are going to be leeks, which I'll do in early April. Then I've got kale, which I'll put in late April, and then finally start the salads bed. So I will then come over here, and this will be the salads bed, and then I will start off with kale on the far side. Now the kale will probably be transplanted before the leeks, so it'll just make it a lot easier taking them out first and leaving the leeks in place behind them. And here we have April nearly done now. The final thing I need to think about are the successions. So runner beans, I will start in mid-April. And the other staple I also want to include, of course, are courgettes. And I'll start those around mid-April as well. So you can just see very quickly how you look at March, how that's looking, and then how it progresses into April. Once you've done the second month, just continue doing the exact same thing, making sure that you have space for your staples, and to also bear in mind when things were planted and always refer back to the previous month to see if anything needs transplanting so you don't miss out on anything. Now, something usually happens around June when it comes to a change, and on this 6-bed plan, the main change in June towards the end of June is harvesting all of the first early potatoes and then transplanting the leeks. And so I'm going to show you June and July through the computer vision and talk you through the process so you can see just how the month by month plan really comes to its own and really shows off its strengths. So just to recap, this is March, and then you see how it transitions into April and then into May, and I'm always looking back in the previous months to make sure that everything matches up. And then we go into June, which is where a change happens. So back in May, there wasn't actually too much planting to be done, just a bit of direct sowing and Swedes. And then here we have the first early potatoes and they're ready. And what I always like to do on the same month is to mention what's going out and then what's going in to replace them. I think that just makes it easier, because if I just put leeks, for example, I might get a bit confused because the potatoes are still there. So it's a very easy way of making it as clear as possible with a quick glance. So the potatoes are out and the leeks are in, and that's the only change I really need to make here in June. Also note that I've put dwarf beans in here. That's because I've gone back to start adding in the things which aren't in the staples, but I'll cover that later on in the video. Now if we just skip ahead on to July, the following month, I've now put the leeks here, instead of just being leeks in, put it back to leeks. So I know there's nothing else needing to happen there. But then these potatoes are out and the kale are in. And if you noticed in the bottom right hand corner of the salad bed, once something goes out, it extends. So if we look back in May, we've got the leeks and the kale in the rows here. In June, that disappears because the leeks go in here. And then in July, the kale disappears because that then goes into the potatoes. And then of course, I've got the key transplanting here. I've got the runner beans coming in June, and I've got the courgettes coming in as well. So you can just very quickly see how from April and then May and then June and then July, how these changes are happening. And by doing it month by month, I can very easily see this, and I can look ahead and I can see that there are gaps available. And for example, right now, I can see that there's a gap available here. So I'd start to then think what crop could fill that gap. And then just continue making your plan, and you can stop maybe around October or November. It's really up to you. You don't need to worry about the next growing season as much until you get into around late summer, early autumn. I like to stop around October or November because that's when I put in my garlic, and I think that's a good stopping point. And remember, as you're doing this, to always have a look back at least 2 or 3 months prior to make sure that everything makes sense, that you're not missing out any succession planting opportunities, and fill it up with all the staples. As you're filling the rest of the gaps with all the crops you want to grow, try and group the crops as much as possible into vegetable groups, whether it's legumes or brassicas, for example. It's not the end of the world if you can't and it's a bit too complicated, but try and stick to that habit. Once you've filled in all of the gaps, firstly, congratulate yourself because you've made a really highly efficient month by month planting plan. But the next thing to do is to find a cheap calendar And usually, for example, this year is 2020. 2020 calendars are ridiculously cheap because we've already started the year. So find a cheap calendar, or you can print off free calendars from the internet. And all you want to do then is have a quick glance for each month, look at your planting plan and look at the main jobs and roughly put when these need to be done. So you can have a calendar maybe on your bedroom wall or in the kitchen next to the planting plan, so the two really marry together. I guarantee that once you start creating a monthly plan, you won't want to do a yearly plan again, because you can see for yourself just how effective it is. With a monthly plan, I love it because I feel it's very current, and I know when I look at the plan and then I go to the garden, they will look almost identical or be very close. And for me, it just makes it easier to plan things, and by cutting it up into bite-sized chunks, and the bite size being months instead of a whole year, I feel that it's a lot more manageable and that I don't miss out on as many opportunities. And I really hope you feel the same. So thank you very much for watching. I really hope this has helped you with your planting plan. And if you have already created an annual one, hopefully you'll see just how simple it is using the same outline to just apply it for a month-to-month basis. And I think gardening has really, it's been made overcomplicated by a lot of mainstream media, and it's demystifying that, and people like Liz Orab and Charles Dowding are really helping to do that as well. And for me, a month-by-month plan really demystifies how the garden works throughout the year. So let me know if you've learned anything useful, and if you would like to support the channel, then please go ahead and get yourself a copy of my new book, Grow Food for Free, and it shows you how to grow an abundance of food without needing any money. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I look forward to answering any questions or comments you have down below in the comments section. Goodbye.